Hello and welcome to 360 Gamercast, episode 213 for Tuesday the 2nd of July 2024. I'm your host Mark Webb, gamertag Pearson ID, Steam ID, Webby360G, and joining me on this very fine evening is...
It's Graham, or GHamox14.
And Sensei Switch. Huzzah.
Oh, how we doing?
Okay.
Not bad, not bad.
Cool. Right, so... just want to start and say I attended Redtone's funeral this past week, Thursday. Always sad, as I mentioned the last couple of weeks, as I say, it's always sad when one of our gaming buddies passes away.
Too young, man, too young.
Yeah, very young, you know. 44 is way too young. But on a positive side, it was really nice to see, just to chat to his family, his mum, and he seemed to have quite a tight-knit group of gaming buddies who he gamed with 3 or 4 evenings a week because his whole gaming group were in attendance. So it was really nice to chat to them and just to get to know about him a little bit more, which was quite nice. So because I never knew, you know, who he gamed with or anything, you know, outside of the 360G.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just seemed like he had a real good group of people he gamed with. We're all really nice lads. So it was really nice to chat to them. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say really. It was just a really nice send off. And yeah, just nice to hear a little bit about his life. So yeah. Apart from that, not personally, I don't know about you guys, I've not done loads of gaming this week. Been quite busy with work and kids and bits and pieces. However, there was a new expansion that launched this week on Friday that came out, so I have been dabbling. And I believe Darren's been dabbling a little bit himself. Not too much, because he's not been around. That'll be Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail expansion. I don't know what your thoughts are, Darren. I mean, I've played maybe about 4 hours-ish. Maybe a bit more. I'm not sure. And I think for me, it's not the greatest start to a new expansion for me. So I think the problem is the last expansion was so good that it was going to be quite hard to beat initially, because in the last expansion it took you into this fantastical other realm. It took you to the moon and all these really cool places. It was like a proper...
Also, winding up a 10-year story as well.
Yeah, a real fanciful story, yeah. Whereas this is another area in the world, and you're not really the main character in it, really. So basically you travel to a new area of the world, and there's a whole political story where you've got to help, where you help one of your friends become the new clan leader or something. And
it's a right of succession, basically, like a competition to see who's going to succeed the ruler of the kingdom.
Yeah. So it's very story heavy, and I get it's trying to let you know who the characters are, give you some insight into the world, this new area of the world, and their cultures and customs and all that stuff. But man, I feel like I've spent more time fucking just sitting there watching text of talking go past and actually playing through the fucking game, and that's just been a little bit... oh, you know what I mean? And it's just been a little bit frustrating.
I mean, the one thing that I've always found semi-frustrating, it's been that way with the last lot of expansions, is obviously they're telling you a story, and obviously a lot of the game is very story-heavy. And it takes longer. It just seems with every expansion, it takes you longer and longer and longer before you even unlock the first dungeon.
Yeah.
And when you unlock it, it's almost like, oh, sweet nectar from the gods. I can actually do something instead of sitting chatting to people.
Yeah.
Because that's generally what you're doing. You're chatting to people, going off, doing a task, killing the mob, coming back, then chatting again.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. And a lot of us are kind of like, I want to see what the dungeons look like. I want to see what loot the dungeons drop, because obviously you get all these different cool gear outfits and stuff like that from doing a lot of the dungeons.
Yeah.
So that's been one of my main complaints with few of the last expansions, where it just takes far too long before you unlock a dungeon.
Yeah.
And you just think, like, do you not think that your players might get bored with, like, sitting there and just going through text and text and text? Because obviously you when you first get to this new area, it's awesome. I like it.
Yeah.
It's basically like, right, we're now going to tour the city, and that takes about half an hour to an hour.
Yeah.
Going around the city, talking about the stuff, learning all the bits and bobs before you go out. And I get it. It's there. It's world building, and it's fine. But in typical JRPG fashion, to a degree, you're kind of like, where's the gameplay? Where's the gameplay? Just get me to the gameplay.
Yeah.
Because that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Like, as you know, if you play JRPGs, at the start of them, you generally just sift through walls and walls and walls of text.
Yeah.
And then something will happen in IRL, and you need to go away to do something, and you're like, I can't. I'm sat here watching this fucking cutscene that won't end with all this bullshit, and I'm not starting this again from the beginning because I'd rather not bother.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. But yeah, I've only been to 2 of the zones, because obviously it's a similar thing. You'll go in and you'll do like half of one of the zones, then you go off to do another half of one of the zones, which is done on purpose because it eases congestion, because everyone in the game isn't forcing themselves into one area.
Yeah.
Or one of the zones. So by splitting them off, it ends up making things a lot smoother and more people can log in and play the game.
Yeah.
Both those zones are fantastic, and they seem really varied as well in like the sort of like type of location. The one other thing I find kind of depressing is you're on a tropical island, technically going for a holiday.
Yeah.
And most of the game it's been pissing down with rain.
Oh, it hasn't for me.
Yeah, no, it's like, so I'm in cutscenes.
Yeah.
And stuff where it's like, oh yeah, we're holding a big festival, and I'm like, it's pissing down with rain. Like, it kind of doesn't particularly make sense. So there was at one point in, like, earlier, before I went to eat, where I was literally just about to trigger a cutscene of like a parade procession, but it was pissing down with rain, so I'm like, I'm not even going to do this now. I'm going to wait, go and have something to eat, and come back and hope that the weather's normal, so the parade isn't going to look retarded.
Yeah, I know.
Because obviously it mirrors the time of day and all that kind of stuff in game when you're doing like a lot of the cutscenes.
Yeah.
But when it looks like bright and colourful and everything, it looks fantastic, because like it's very slight, but they have actually updated the engine for the game.
Yes, they have. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've improved the lighting in a lot of areas. Mainly of which was like, because the character models were technically ripped from 1.0, which is like, what, 12, 14 years ago now?
Yeah.
And obviously some of the lighting on the shadows of your face at times made your character look a bit weird and strange. It wasn't often, but it just happened every now and again, and they've kind of ironed that out. They've made the textures on the clothing look a lot better. They've also included a lot more foliage and stuff in some of the areas. So earlier, again, when I was going back to waste a bit of time before eating, I went to unlock Viper, which is the new class with the dual swords. Yeah. You unlock it in Aldar, in case you're wondering. Yeah. And at one point, you're sent off to Camp Drybone in Eastern Thanalan, and it's generally quite a dusty, sort of deserty kind of place. And while I was walking through parts of that, there's just way more like clumps of grass and foliage and stuff dotted around that makes the world feel that little bit more alive. Okay, like it was fine for me originally, but it's nice to obviously go back and revisit some older areas and be like, oh, this looks better. I can see that looks nicer. It looks a bit more busier and stuff. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. The story's kind of different, but it was going to always have a hard hill to climb because as far as I'm concerned, the story from obviously the 2.0 that I played all the way up to the end of Endwalker is probably the greatest story I've ever played in a video game, full stop.
Yeah, I mean, Endwalker was absolutely phenomenal. The story went on for a couple of years, didn't it? Really, I'd say. When did Endwalker come out? 2021. So
yeah, it was just under that. Yeah, so this one is a little bit later than normal, but obviously all of the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
Did obviously affect things, and
but I can understand. But with Endwalker, they obviously with all the patches, are carried on the story throughout, etc., and it was just an epic because you just took you on this epic grand adventure. And to be fair, you know, the other expansions, apart from Stormblood, have all been pretty decent. You know, I mean, Heaven's Ward is probably still one of my favourites. You know, but coming from Endwalker, you know, this is just, I mean, as I say, I was saying to you earlier, I don't think obviously I've played it enough to really make a good judgment because obviously these expansions are long as fuck. The stories are really long. As I've only opened up 2 of the areas. I think there's 6 new areas.
Yeah, there's always 6 new zones, yeah.
You know, I'm just going from my initial impressions, and my initial impressions are just a little bit lackluster, to be honest with you. I mean, the first dungeon was good, but
I think you will warm up. There's also a few little tidbits here and there which I like. So there's a brief conversation. Obviously, the leader of this big city is a two-headed mammal jar, which is a beast tribe race that's been in the original 2.0 games.
Yeah.
And there's this big mysticism behind like these people that are regarded as like the chosen, which are like the 2 heads.
Yeah.
And you actually have a conversation at one point with someone, and he said something about, he mentions another 2-headed mammal jar that actually went to Eorzea to conquer it.
Yeah.
And your character kind of gives that kind of like recognition of like, And I don't know whether you remembered, you've already fought him. He was a dungeon boss in like the original 2.0.
Oh man,
yeah. So there's a lot of I do like the way that there's always a lot of little throwbacks, and they always reference stuff that has generally occurred before.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, also the way with certain quest lines, if you've completed a certain quest line or a job quest and you speak to certain NPCs, they will interact with you slightly differently because you have knowledge of something that may or may not have occurred.
Right, okay.
And you're privy to. It was a bit like if you hadn't done the Dragoon quest line before going to Heaven's Ward.
Right,
kind of a thing. So obviously, if you knew of Estinian and that way back then because he was the job NPC.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is actually kind of interesting considering the job NPC ended up becoming one of the main characters.
Yeah.
And that is the way. One of the things that I do love about the 14 and stuff is the characters in general are pretty well thought out. There's generally a lot of good character development.
Yeah.
And even with people that you think are dickheads or like evil, the more you know about them, they're not particularly. I mean, there obviously were some, like Nail, absolute bitch, like full stop, but obviously Gaius, for an example.
Yeah.
He's your main antagonist through pretty much all of the first game. He turns up again a bit later on. And I think even before he turns up, you find out that he outlawed certain weapons from being used during their conflicts of, like, domination.
Oh, right.
Because he deemed them too evil. And you're kind of like, hang on a minute, that doesn't sound like the guy we knew. Like, he doesn't sound like this horrendous, like, megalomaniac. And then obviously as you find out more about him, he's kind of an all-right guy just on the wrong team at the time. Which happens in all wars, let's be real. A lot of the time, you're always going to have, like, someone on the other side that you could sit down and have a good conversation or a chat with, and in any other circumstance, you'd be good friends.
Yeah.
But because you're born in separate places and each country's got their own ideals, off to war you go. And I will say another thing that this has done so far throughout the expansion that I've always liked is just teaching people basic life lessons. They're literally sprinkled in there. Well, just learn about other people, listen to what other people have to say. And so there's so many different things like that in the game.
Yeah.
So many little things that you can take in multiple different ways. Whereas you get a lot of entertainment nowadays that's generally kind of like one-sided.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy is always, instead of presenting you with one side, they give you a cylinder. And depending on which angle you look at the cylinder, you can see different things in it. You can take different lessons from it. It's clever. Like, I've always appreciated that. Like, even going back to, say, like we was talking about before with all of the stuff with Doma and the Doman refugees coming over into the Eorzea, and then they brought up all the stuff about the refugees and that, and it's all done really tactfully and great.
Yeah.
Because they show all different sides of the good and the bad of basically things like that happening. And rather than treat the audience like an idiot, they let you make up your own mind.
Yeah, that's good.
By presenting you with all the facts. Yeah, I love it. Like this. So I've never, even with like the stuff and the patches and that I've never really enjoyed as much as some of the others. I've always still taken good stuff from them.
Yeah.
Because it's just really well written. I mean, hell, we've got like 3 Encyclopedia Eorzeas now.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Connected to all the history of the game, and they're thick.
Yeah, oh god.
If you swung it at a child, you'd kill it.
Yeah.
Kind of thick. Like.
As I say,
so I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Darren. I mean, as I say, I'm very early on, so I'm not going to make a judgment because I love the game anyway. But I'm just at the minute, I'm just a little bit disappointed with so far. I just think it's been a bit too slow for me to begin with. But what I will say though is the graphical update is pretty good. The lighting and stuff is good. It took me a little while to even notice the upgrade though on my PC, to be fair. But then when I did notice, I was like, oh yeah, cool.
It's usually just either ambient lighting, reflections, or just basic things like the stitching on characters' outfits.
Yeah, but as I will say though, I've been playing it mostly on my Steam Deck over my PC, and even with the graphical updates, it runs really nice on the Steam Deck still.
I was partly worried because obviously the game was like before obviously this thing came out. I was like, oh, it runs okay at the moment. You know what I mean? I'm running it at like a 4K-ish res, and it's hitting like 60 and all that, and how it should be, all the rest of it. Is this update going to actually hinder the performance? And it doesn't seem to have changed it at all.
No.
Which is pretty impressive considering this is a thing that's right across the whole game. And the fact that now, with this texture and graphics update, or sort of lighting update they've added, plus a new expansion, the game is still 74, or was it 72? It might be 72, something like 72 gigs. For basically like a main base MMO game, and what is it now, 6 expansions? And that's including all the patches that have come in between the expansions as well. That's crazy to have a game like that. And then you'll get some other game that comes out and be like, oh yeah, I'm 140 gig, mate, install me.
Yeah. I mean, on PC, I'm just looking now, it's 98 gig, which is still impressive.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then you'll have COD come out, which is like an 8-hour campaign or something, and it's like, yeah, that'll be 200 gig of your hard drive space, mate.
Yeah. But no,
so, yeah.
I'm enjoying it, but as I say, I'm just a little bit. I need to give it some more time. I just haven't had the time to really plow into it, like I would have wanted. But that's life. But I'm not going to rush. I'm just going to take my time, because the problem I have with this game is, like, I rush through the campaigns and I do everything, and then I'm like, yeah, I've got nothing I want to do now. So then I'll turn it off for a couple of months until the next story patch comes out. So,
I mean, I checked YouTube when I got in earlier, and obviously one of the first things I saw coming up was like, oh, end game extreme trials and stuff. So people have like hammered through it already.
That's
like
crazy.
Hammered through it already,
yeah.
And they're already doing all the end gamey sort of stuff.
Wow.
And
That's
it's just
insane.
like, what are you doing?
Have you not got a life?
It doesn't make sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I was talking to a couple of people in the FC, because obviously mentioned it to them, and they said, yeah, most of them just skip the story and skip all the cutscenes.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I was like, but this game is literally the best part of this game is the story and the characters and shit. Like, if you want amazing combat or something like that, you want to play Black Desert. Or something that's like a super huge challenge, like play like World of Warcraft hardcore raids or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, literally the best thing from 14 is the story and the characters and the music.
Yeah.
Like, the music in this expansion is weird. Like, I was not expecting, like, it's jazz
funky.
meets
I was going to say it's funky,
Kenny G. I like with the old saxophone going and that and things. Yeah. Just,
I look forward to talking about it a bit more next week once played.
Yeah, once actually get to proper play it.
Yeah. But yeah, as I say, I mean, I was going to mention actually, it's been. What's quite interesting is obviously the Steam reviews, like every other expansion's very positive. This is at mixed, and a lot of people are complaining about what I've complained about. It's just the long-ass. They're not even cutscenes with people talking. It's reading, you know what I mean? And a lot of people are just moaning there's too much reading for them and not enough action, you know.
I mean, I know one of the reasons why as well they did it, because they did something like that in one of the early parts of an expansion where they had an open world like instanced event.
Right.
I think it was in Stormblood, and it basically crashed the game for a lot of people. There were people queuing up to get into this instance. If you tried to go into it like with too many people standing there, it used to freeze up and it would cause loads of people to log out and stuff. So they're obviously trying to figure out ways to sort of ease people in slowly.
Yeah.
But I still remember one of the other ones back in the day. I can't remember which one it was, but it was basically like, right, we're going to this location. You get on a ship, and then literally within half an hour, the ship's like been beached somewhere at like a ship graveyard, and you're off on the dungeon.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
That's the way to go. Whereas like on this one so far, I think I can't remember if I've unlocked the dungeon or not. Yeah, I must have done. No, I might not have. I'm trying to think. So it's like the two first parts, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
I can't remember if I unlocked the first bit. But yeah, so I look forward to all of that, because that's when you get to use all your new abilities and all those other sort of bits and bobs that your character will learn and stuff as you progress through the game.
Yeah.
But the other thing as well that can be a bit daunting for most people when you're obviously jumping into expansion or whatever, there's so much to do.
Yeah.
At the start of an expansion, you've got all of those classes to level again. You've got new classes to level. You've got obviously your crafters and gatherers to level, new recipes to learn, like places to find, stupid jumping puzzles. They're back again in Turiel as well.
Fun.
No, I've never been a fan of the old jumping puzzles, just because it's not a platform game.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to judge jumping distances and things like that when it's not actually a platform game.
Yeah.
That require you to jump up like multiple levels of a building, and if you fuck up, all the way to the bottom again to try again, while you're restrained from like hitting yourself or something.
Cool. I think that's enough Final Fantasy talk for 1 week anyway. We'll be talking about it more next week because we'll be.
Oh, definitely, and another one next week.
So I think we're going to let Graham talk for a bit now because he's been sitting there patiently
biting his tongue,
and he's managed to stay awake through 20 odd minutes of Final Fantasy talk. So well done. To listen to the rest of this week's awesome episode, you need to subscribe to the Patreon. So head on over to patreon.com/360gamercast. From there, you can sign up from as little as £5 a month and you get an episode every single week of the year. This week's episode is almost 2 hours long and we talk about Destiny 2 expansion, Halo Master Chief Collection, the Phoenix Wright Collection on Xbox Game Pass, iRacing, and lots of news, including rumours of Sony stopping all physical media, XCloud coming to Amazon Firesticks, and much, much more. So again, that website address is patreon.com/360gamercast.